Hey, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later. Each day when we have class, I start with meditation. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session first, and then afterwards we'll study the teachings of the Buddha to help you guys understand more about what he actually taught. Because what the Buddha did is he figured out 2,500 years ago how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You can eliminate all of this through training your mind. Oftentimes people think these feelings are being caused by the outside world, but it's actually what's going on in your own mind that's causing all these feelings. And the Buddha figured out how to eliminate that through training the mind. So meditation is an important part of that training that you use in order to train your mind to get to enlightenment. But there's other things that you need too besides meditation. So that's why after our meditation, I'll share some teachings with you guys to help you understand more of what the Buddha actually taught. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is I start with some chanting to be able to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you'd like to chant along, there's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to get a chanting sheet, and it'll actually help you to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So he used chanting as a learning tool, as a learning device. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There are none of those types of things in the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. If you see those kinds of things associated with his teachings, they're actually misunderstandings of his teachings. He never taught those things. Everything he taught you is to be able to train your mind and develop the mind to get to enlightenment. And rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer doesn't actually help you to be able to do that. Today, we use this as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you decide you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. At any point, you can help yourself to a chanting sheet over there. And for those of you guys online, you'll find this on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and just scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see the chanting sheet there. If you end up getting one of these sheets and you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself, because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, because this would be ego or arrogance and putting yourself above someone, where by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't actually do that. You just think of yourself as being equal to everybody. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these actually came from his students. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance where I'll essentially be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's a period of time of quietness where we're all just going to be meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining online will just all be meditating together. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping. Someone here might cough or sneeze. This is very normal. If you're in meditation, craving permanent silence, and you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. It's the mind itself that's causing that, because the mind is craving permanence while it's living in an impermanent world. Things in the world are constantly changing around you, but the mind will crave permanence and it will hold on to things. And because of that, it causes its own discontent feelings. But if you're in meditation, understanding that the world is always changing and things around you are constantly changing, now you can be at ease and you can rest comfortably, knowing that those sounds you hear are normal, because they're going to arise, they're going to change, and then they're going to fade away. This is everything around you. So during that period of time of quietness, you'll hear sounds, but you can rest at ease and be peaceful when you hear those, knowing that they're not permanent, that they arise, they change, and they fade away. After the period of time of quietness where we're meditating, we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand some teachings of the Buddha on the path to enlightenment. In terms of your body position for meditation, the Buddha taught 4 positions to meditate in because your body can't be in the same position permanently. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. So there's various courses, classes, and retreats that help you to be able to learn these different positions. But I'll give you a little bit of guidance on the seated position just to kind of help you out for today. And then you can learn the more detailed versions of this when you study in other programs. Understand that there isn't just one way to sit. Sitting, you could sit on the floor, you could sit in a chair. Maybe if someone's at home, they might be on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. What I'm going to share with you are just suggestions or recommendations that you're welcome to use if you like. But if you come up with something on your own that you find comfortable, you can use that too, because there isn't just one fixed way to actually sit. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is going to help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in their cross-leg positions, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this will impede the circulation in the lower body and it can cause pain. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. You could put your palms on your thighs or your knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you could put your hands and arms wherever you like. And the same thing's true for anybody who's in a chair or in a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed. So this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid with your upper body, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it help you to keep your mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakewata Tammo Namang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakwa arahang sammasammuto vicacaranang sammuno sakatoro kawitu anutero purisa dhamma sati satatawa manusrang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin and into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังโหโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. As I was sharing, today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original teachings of the Buddha, helping students to be able to make their way to enlightenment. We have many programs here, many courses, classes, retreats, many ways that you can actually learn the teachings. Usually what I'm doing is I'm teaching in a traditional method where I'm teaching for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions. I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. I do this in various courses and programs that I share. On Sundays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. here at the temple and online as well, of course, I share what's called the group learning program, where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book, helping students to gradually understand the path to enlightenment. This is volume 1 of our book series. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the best place for people to really get started with understanding the teachings of the Buddha because it's a foundational text. It'll really help you to be able to understand the foundation of the teachings of the Buddha, helping you to train your mind to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Tomorrow on Sundays, we're going to be in chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fear. Are you really scared? I'm going to help you to understand how to eliminate any fears that you have, whether you're fearful of spiders or snakes, or you're afraid of heights, or maybe you're even afraid of your own death. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any fear in your mind whatsoever. You've eliminated all of that. So there are certain tools and techniques that you can apply that's going to help you to eliminate all your fears. So tomorrow I'm going to be teaching that as part of our class. And I'm going to be doing that in the traditional method that I shared, which is I'll teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions, teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. Even today at 1 p.m., I have an introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course from 1 to 4, where I'm going to be sharing sharing what the teachings of the Buddha are, what the teachings of the Buddha are not. And then I'm going to be teaching his very first teaching, which is called the Four Noble Truths. In 4 simple statements, you can understand what is the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And then we have other opportunities to be able to learn throughout the weekend. And even next week, I have a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course where it's Monday through Friday from 9 to 3. On Saturdays, this is called our Pali Canon and English Study Group, where this book series of 13 books, we actually explore volumes 2 through 13 in this program. Over a period of about a year and a half, students gradually learn the original teachings of the Buddha through his own words. And as we make our way through this program, we do it a bit differently than the way that we do our other programs. Where our other programs, like I shared, I teach in a more traditional method. Here, what it is, it's more like a study group. And oftentimes people already have a foundation before they come into this program. But if this is your first time here, it's okay. You'll learn plenty today. But just understand this isn't where people will typically start off their journey. They'll usually start in some of these other programs that I mentioned. So the way that we do this program is I invite people either here or online to be able to read a chapter from the teachings of the Buddha. This particular chapter is from volume 5. You can see it's only 1 page with the words of the Buddha here. And after someone reads this chapter, then I'll share some teachings on that, helping you to understand how to integrate that into your life. And then afterwards, I'll open up to whatever questions you guys have, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. You can ask any and all questions that you like. We're actually starting this new book today, which is volume 5 of our book series. It's titled The First Stage of Enlightenment, Stream Enterer. This is a book that is really guided towards helping you get to the first stage of enlightenment, because there's 4 individual stages to enlightenment, and your mind's actually enlightened when you get to the 4th stage. But these other stages of enlightenment are important because it's helping your mind to develop. This is like a personal growth plan that the Buddha provides you as part of his teachings. The way his teachings are is it's not rules and commandments, it's not beliefs, it's not believing something and hoping that something good will happen when you die. It's also not rites and rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. None of those kinds of things were taught by the Buddha. Instead, he's teaching you how to do this inner growth, this inner development, how to become a better and better person. So this 4 stages of enlightenment that he taught is kind of like a personal growth plan, helping you to be able to see how to grow and develop over the course of your journey of multiple years, training your mind through the teachings of the Buddha. And we're starting this new book today as part of this particular program, which is volume 5. So if you're here at the temple and you'd like to volunteer to read or ask a question, we have microphones in the middle of the room there in the white bowl, and there's also some up here as well in the front. If you could just get a microphone, that would be helpful for the people online to be able to hear you, and the people here at the temple will be able to hear you as well. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button, hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And you can keep these microphones with you at your seat, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And anybody who's online, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. And if you're in Zoom and you'd like to either ask a question or volunteer to read, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then ask questions or volunteer to read that way. So is there anybody here or online that would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Looks like Rachel's going to read the first one. Sometimes the unenlightened mind is shy, right? That's part of the discontent feelings that the mind has. But you can break through that shyness by choosing to actually put your mind in that situation. So go ahead, Rachel.
The mirror of the stream enterer. Ananda, I will teach you a teachings exposition called the mirror of the teachings, equipped with which a noble disciple, if he aspires, could by himself declare of himself. I am one finished with hell, finished with the animal realm, finished with the realm of afflicted spirits, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the nether worlds. I am a stream enterer, no longer bound to the nether worlds, fixed in destination, with enlightenment as my destination. And what, Ananda, is that teachings exposition, the mirror of the teachings, equipped with which a noble disciple, if he aspires, could by himself declare thus of himself. Here, Ananda, a noble disciple, possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The perfectly enlightened one is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and human beings, the enlightened one, the fortunate one. He possesses confirmed confidence in the teachings thus. The teachings are well expounded by the perfectly enlightened one, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the community thus. The community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way, that is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblotched, liberating, praised by the wise, not misunderstood, and leading to concentration. This, Ananda, is those teachings exposition, the mirror of the teachings, equipped with which a noble disciple, if he aspires, could by himself declare of himself.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So this is the first chapter here in volume 5, where the Buddha is talking about 4 things that a stream enterer or someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment will actually experience and what they possess. He referred to this first stage of enlightenment as a stream enterer because once you enter the stream, you're actually going to be able to get to the ocean, right? So if you have a log and the log enters the stream, eventually it's going to get to the ocean. It's just a matter of time. So the same thing is true once you get to the first stage of enlightenment. It's only a matter of time you're going to get to enlightenment. It's just a matter of time, either in this life or some future life, an individual is actually going to make their way to enlightenment. So we would refer to this first stage of enlightenment as a stream enterer, where today we oftentimes just call it the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment. These names that he actually used is actually very helpful. So he would refer to this first stage of enlightenment as a stream enterer. So there's multiple things that you need to be able to learn and practice to be able to get to this first stage of enlightenment, but the Buddha is laying out some of those in this particular discourse. But the way that you need to look at the teachings of the Buddha is you need to look at them in their totality. Sometimes people look at just one discourse and they're like, aha, this is what you need in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. But they haven't seen all the other discourses where he's talking about other stuff that you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So the Buddha will teach something like this where he'll penetrate into a certain portion of understanding what it takes to get to the first stage of enlightenment. But then there's other discourses that he adds to that to be able to help you more fully understand what it takes to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So this is just one discourse. So here he's saying, okay, if you kind of, are equipped with these particular things that he's describing, then this individual is going to be a stream enterer. But there's other things besides this that you would need. Once somebody actually gets to the first stage of enlightenment, they will never be reborn into the lower realms. The Buddha refers to this as the plane of misery, hell, the animal realm, or the realm of afflicted spirits. As you guys heard me share, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. That's not what his teachings are about. You're not believing a bunch of things and hoping something good happens when you die. The Buddha also doesn't try to fear or guilt or shame you into learning any particular thing. He's teaching you true reality of what's truly happening. And he teaches 5 realms of existence. He teaches the hell realm. He teaches the animal realm, the afflicted spirits, which are the ghosts. There's the human realm, and then there's the heavenly realm. Sometimes people see these realms as being in some far distant place somewhere, but they're actually all here in the same time and space as everybody. Just like there's a human being sitting here. If a human being got up and left, maybe there could be an animal that comes and sits here in this particular chair. So even these other realms of hell, afflicted spirits, which are ghosts, and the heavenly realm, these are formless realms where these beings don't have physical form, but they're all in the same time and space as us. It's not like they're in some deep down down in the core of the earth or way up high in the sky somewhere. We're all in the same time and space. And this is why you can actually independently verify that these 5 realms actually exist. Right now, you might not have had those experiences, but if you've ever had the experience of seeing some of these beings or hearing some of these beings, you actually know that this is actually true, that these beings actually exist. So there are beings in the hell realm, there are ghosts and spirits, there are heavenly beings as well, but not everybody has had the experience of interacting with those types of beings. But if you ever have that experience and you didn't understand that that is true reality, that is the way the world actually functions, that's the way that actually the world works, you could be really shaken up. So the Buddha is not teaching you about believing in these kinds of things. He's actually teaching you true reality. So now if you see a hell being, or if you see a ghost, or you have interaction with a heavenly being, you understand like this is normal. You don't have to feel like you're going crazy or anything like that. So the Buddha does teach you these things, and then it's up to you to independently verify his teachings to be true or false. He knew that these things are true, and that's why he actually taught them, but you need to be able to verify what is true and what is false. And you should never believe anything that he shares. Don't believe anything that I share. And you should also not feel guilted or shamed or feared into learning anything. So he teaches you the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence, because this is the way that the world truly works. And you can actually independently verify this. You might not have had that opportunity, or you might not have that wisdom right now of how to do that. But over time in your journey with the teachings of the Buddha, you can independently verify that. So here, what he's essentially saying is once you get to this first stage of enlightenment, you will no longer be reborn into these lower realms. If you die in the first stage of enlightenment, you are going to come back into the human world. He talks about this in his other discourses, but here he's just kind of prefacing it with this particular paragraph. And he's saying, okay, someone who's gotten to this first stage of enlightenment, they're no longer going to be reborn in the lower realm, and they're fixed in destination with enlightenment as their destination. As I was sharing with you, once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. That's why the Buddha is saying that this person is fixed in destination with enlightenment as their destination. So then he's talking to his student Ananda. Ananda is one of his close students that was actually with the Buddha for the longest period of time. From the very beginning of his teaching career all the way until his death, this particular student Ananda was close by the Buddha. And we think he was probably like the Buddha's cousin or his brother-in-law or something like that. That's what we think based on what we know about this individual. But he was very influential in helping the teachings get documented so that now, 2,500 years later, we would know what the teachings are. So the Buddha is talking to this student Ananda. And what he's saying is that someone in the first stage of enlightenment will have confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the perfectly enlightened one, the Arahant. The Arahant is an enlightened being. So by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you've already learned and practiced a significant amount of the teachings of the Buddha, and your mind is going to be performing better than it was when you were off the path to enlightenment. You're going to see that there's a decrease in your discontent feelings. Whatever anger and sadness and frustration that you experience when you were off the path to enlightenment, by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, the discontentedness is just a mere fraction of that. You're still getting discontent when you're in the first stage of enlightenment. It's not until you get to the 4th stage of enlightenment that you've eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. In the first stage of enlightenment, though, you've eliminated some of those causes and conditions, so your discontentedness is reduced. It's a mere fraction of what it once was. And by having done that and learned and practiced the teachings and see that they're actually working to improve the condition of your mind and your life, you will have confirmed confidence in the Buddha. Meaning you will be confident that this individual's teachings are actually working. You'll be confident that this individual actually lived because you can see that these teachings that he shared are actually working. So that's what that first criteria is for a person who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. They will have this particular quality. Then the second one is that they will have confirmed confidence in the teachings, that the teachings were well explained by the Buddha, that they're directly visible, immediate, meaning you can immediately implement them and actually see benefit and improvement with them, and inviting one to come and see. What the Buddha means by this is that his teachings are to be examined, to be investigated. The Buddha never said, just believe me. He said just the opposite. He said, come and see. Come investigate my teachings. Come and see for yourself. Because the Buddha knew that those teachings that he discovered led to his enlightenment. So if it led to his enlightenment, it would lead to your enlightenment too. So if you investigate and examine them close enough, you'll be able to see that they're actually working to improve the condition of your mind in your life. Because we might think that the Buddha was the only person who was actually teaching at the time of his life. But there were plenty of other people who were teaching, claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. He knew it was his teachings. So he would invite people to come and see and investigate his teachings and experience them, that they would be applied and experienced. And as you experience those teachings and the effects of them, that's how you'll get more and more confidence in the teachings themselves, that you'll have confidence in the Buddha and you'll have confidence in the teachings. Of course, you don't come to the path to enlightenment with confidence, but over time, as you investigate the teachings and you see they're true and they're actually working to improve the condition of your mind and your life, that's where the confidence comes in. Then you gain this confidence in the community. What a community is the community of practitioners that you're learning and growing with. Like right now, there's just, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 of you guys here, I'm not sure. But there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who learn as part of this community. And this community is very beneficial for you. It's going to help you to be able to progress on the path to enlightenment. The teacher is helping you, of course, to provide you resources, provide you guidance, helping you to be able to learn and develop on the path. But you'll also learn from other people as well. You'll kind of observe other people and you'll be like, wow, I really like how that person's so generous. Maybe I'll start practicing some of that. Or wow, that person's so polite and so respectful. Maybe I'll start practicing some of that too. So you'll learn from other members of the community. And again, we might think that it was only the Buddha who was teaching during his lifetime, but there were other communities of people that were learning from other teachers that weren't part of the Buddhist community. So here the Buddha is saying that you have confirmed confidence in the community, that the community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. Right? Because other people were learning other things too. And they were doing things that weren't necessarily wise. And the Buddha knew that, but he knew that his students were practicing the true way, the proper way of how to actually get to enlightenment. Then he talks about the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. What this is that there's 8 people that the Buddha talks about as having developed on the path to a certain point, that they're worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation. What these are anybody who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or anybody who's practicing to get into one of those 4 stages of enlightenment. Those are 8 individuals, right? That's 4 pairs of individuals. Someone who's practicing to get into the first stage of enlightenment and someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment. That's the first pair. Someone who's practicing to get into the second stage or someone who's in the second stage. That's the second pair. Then there's someone who's practicing for the third stage or who's in the third stage. That's the third pair. And then there's someone who's practicing for the fourth stage or someone who's in the fourth stage. So these are the 8 types of individuals that are practicing the teachings very closely. Because you might think that if a student is learning from the Buddha, that they're all learning and practicing the teachings so well and so close. This isn't true. That's the mind thinking that the world's permanent. But when there's a Buddha in existence, there's going to be students who are really close to learning the teachings and developing their mind very closely and practicing well. And there's going to be some who aren't, right? There's going to be especially people out on the outer edges who really aren't practicing the teachings, but they might kind of consider themselves a student of that particular person. But the Buddha was encouraging people out of all these thousands and thousands of people that were learning from him, countless people that were learning from him. He would encourage people to make offerings to this core group of people who were one of the 4 types of individuals or one of the 8 types of individuals. So this is the group of people that are practicing well and that will allow the teachings to continue in the world so that more and more people can learn and practice. And then the 4th quality that he's talking about here is he's talking about someone who has these virtues. This is virtuous moral conduct. By the time you get into the first stage of enlightenment, your moral conduct's going to be greatly improved in terms of your intentions, your speech, your actions, and your livelihood and the way that you choose to sustain your life. You're going to have greatly improved all of those things where you're not causing harm in the world through your intentions, your speech, your actions, or your livelihood, the way you interact with people. Because oftentimes people think that when things are happening in the world and when they're happening to you, that it's other people who are causing the things that you experience on a day-to-day basis. But it's actually your own decisions that lead to any particular result that you experience. If you speak in harsh and hostile and bitter ways to people, you might think that that person deserved that. But it's actually coming from your own mind that you're choosing to talk harsh and hostile and bitter to that person. And when you put that out, that's what's going to come back to you. You can see in the relationships where you're having struggles and difficulties, when you're bitter and harsh and hostile to those people treat you the same way. That's the natural law of karma. Of whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. So when you're harsh and hostile and bitter, you're just creating more difficulties and more struggles for yourself. It's kind of like walking down the beach and the wind's blowing in your face and you're like kicking up sand. And it just keeps blowing back in your face over and over and over again. Well, if you keep putting out harshness, hostility, and bitterness through your moral conduct, it's all just going to come back to you. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to be able to get to this peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life. You're going to need to improve your moral conduct and the way that you interact with people. And he provides you guidance on this in other teachings. It's called the Eightfold Path. That's something that's a core central teaching of the Buddha. I'm going to be teaching that on Tuesday as part of our course next week, where this is a teaching that you would need to learn inside and out in order to really be able to get firmly on the path to enlightenment. So by the time you get to this first stage of enlightenment, you're practicing a certain level of moral conduct that is wholesome. And you're going to see that your relationships are starting to improve because you're starting to be more polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. You're being gentle with the people around you instead of being so bitter and harsh and hostile. Sometimes when you're having difficulties in relationships, people think the way to solve this is to change the other person. You might be trying to change mom and dad or brothers and sisters and people like this. But the way that you're going to get to an improved life is you need to change the way that you interact with people in the world. If you change the way you interact with people, you'll see that the people around you will also change as well, because they're going to experience this improved way of you interacting with them. But as long as you're bitter and harsh and hostile, you're going to just keep experiencing that coming back. So someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment is they will have a certain improved moral conduct above and beyond what they were doing when they were off the path to enlightenment. So the Buddha gives you that guidance in the Eightfold Path and in the 5 precepts and things like that. He's helping you to see this cause and effect relationship between the way that you interact with people and the way that people interact with you. Oftentimes the mind doesn't understand this. This is the lack of wisdom that the mind has in the unenlightened state, is that you might feel justified in the unwise moral conduct. But once you see the truth that it's your decisions that are leading to what it is that you experience, then you might decide that you would be interested to improve the way you interact with others. And by the time someone's gotten to this first stage of enlightenment, they would have clearly seen the natural law of karma to be true, and they will have improved their moral conduct to the point that the Buddha is describing here. And he describes in other places where he talks about having practiced right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So this is part of getting to the first stage of enlightenment, that there's these 4 qualities that someone will have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, as well as having improved their moral conduct to a certain degree. But there's other things too. This isn't just the only thing. Because remember, I mentioned you need to look at the teachings of the Buddha in totality, not in isolation. So do you guys have questions on this particular chapter? Anything you'd like to ask about what I've shared or what we've studied here? Yes, sir. If you could get a microphone either there or here. I've actually got one here for you, or you could get one over there too. Yep. You just press the gray button. You see it? Press it and hold it. Mm-hmm.
My apologies. How do I call you? So like master?
It's up to you. My name is David. You can refer to me however you like.
Mr. David Master.
Yeah.
I have a question about the enlightenment, because as we all know, in this world we have like many of the religions, like Christians, and Islams, and Buddhas. But I feel like some of the religions, they were like very strict rules for their believers, and but a Buddha, they teach us to enlightenment, to think ourselves, to look into ourselves, to be no more fear, no more jealous, no more like bad emotions. What do you think the Buddha is different? Like why only a Buddha teach us the enlightenment, but the others, they were like rules, and they can, maybe they can only believe God. But they also love each other. They also love to live longer. But Buddhas teach us the enlightenment.
Sure. So a Buddha is a fully perfectly enlightened one, meaning their mind is completely purified and they figured out how to do this on their own. These are the three criteria of what makes a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three criteria of what make a Buddha, and we refer to them as fully perfectly enlightened because they don't have any extra baggage in their mind. They're fully awake, meaning they've cultivated wisdom about the natural laws. There's certain natural laws that are part of this world that we're all experiencing, but the mind in the unenlightened state is unaware of these natural laws. And because of the lack of wisdom of these natural laws, people will go around and do unwise things, right? You use drugs and alcohol, or you'll have sex with lots of different people, lots of different boyfriends and girlfriends, or, you'll steal, or you'll lie, or things like this. And these are things that are unwise, because when you do these things, it actually impacts you in an unwholesome way. But people don't realize that, right? So they end up doing these things because they don't understand this natural laws. So the Buddha was fully awake, meaning he fully cultivated wisdom about these natural laws, and he could see these natural laws for himself. So when he describes his teachings, in my opinion, they're very clear, very concise, and very precise, that leads to the awakening of the mind, where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. Because when you're unaware of the natural laws, you are living in a world that you don't understand. And you will struggle and you'll have difficulties. That's what the stress and the anxiety, the anger and the frustration and all these other feelings are. It's you living in a world that you don't understand. So now your mind's having struggles and difficulties with that. So the Buddha, instead of teaching rules or commandments, he's teaching you to cultivate the wisdom of these natural laws, so that then you can see the truth for yourself of what these natural laws are. And now you can navigate the world peacefully. So these other people, like Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad and Hindu teachings and all these other things, Judaism and different things like this, those people who originated and created those types of teachings, their mind had tapped into these natural laws, because there's the same natural laws that everybody can see if your mind is awake to them, right? That they tapped into these natural laws too, to a certain degree. But in my opinion, they didn't have the depth of wisdom that the Buddha did, because the Buddha was fully awake. He was fully aware of exactly how to move his mind to this enlightened mental state, so he could guide other people to do that as well. But you could look at Jesus Christ's teachings and you can see similarities between those and the Buddha, or you could look at Hindu teachings, or Muslim teachings, or Judaism, or any number of different things that you could look at a collection of teachings and you can draw some comparisons between them. And my thought of why this is occurring is that these individual original teachers, they were also tapping into these natural laws and able to see them in a certain way. And they described them slightly different in some cases, and sometimes very differently. So like, for example, the Buddha would teach or let's just say, like Jesus, he would teach love thy neighbor, right? Where the Buddha would teach loving kindness and compassion for all beings, which is very similar. Or Jesus would teach you reap what you sow. The Buddha would teach the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, right? Very similar. There's other things like this that we could draw comparisons on, but these are just a couple to help you see that it's the natural laws that are part of the world, and these different teachers tapped into them on their own, and then they describe them. But their level of being able to describe them is based on the clarity of their own mind. And because the Buddha was fully awake and perfectly enlightened, he was able to explain them very clearly, where some of these other teachers, in my opinion, were not fully awake. And this is why we have rules and commandments, and we have beliefs, and we have some things that aren't necessarily helpful in your journey to enlightenment. But you can also see some other things that are part of those collection of teachings that are actually helpful in leading to what the Buddha is teaching as enlightenment. In the Bible, you can see over 20 different references to meditation. You can see things where they're talking about the cultivation of wisdom, where they're talking about walking towards the light, and all these other kinds of things. These are all very similar to what the Buddha was saying. But because Jesus, in my opinion, wasn't fully awake, that's why we don't have the same level of clarity as we do in the teachings of the Buddha. Any other questions you guys have? We have a question coming in on Zoom. Let's see here. It looks like Calvin has a question. He says, teacher, let me move this over. Sorry, little technical thing here. It says, teacher, I see bright light in a form of a ball in my meditation, and at times I see something else. Does it indicate anything or just an illusion? This is just an indication that your brain is actually seeing things during your meditation, that sight is actually occurring inside the brain, where oftentimes people think it's the eye. The eye is just a lens that is bringing in light, but sight is actually occurring inside the brain. This is why when you close your eyes, you can actually still see things, right? It's not the eye that produces the sight. It's actually inside the brain. What you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're training the mind. There's the brain, which is the physical organ, but then there's the mind, which is non-physical. And as you're training your mind and cleaning that up, there's effects to the brain. And as the brain is changing and creating these physical changes, you can actually experience certain changes within the brain that you can actually see. And sometimes it can be that there's no changes at all, and you just see different colors and different things, like this white ball that you're talking about. But other times there's actually very significant changes that are happening in the mind and in the brain. And this can produce all kinds of like green and purple and white and different things like this. So the significance is that your mind is being trained, but it's not like you're a special person, or it doesn't mean you're going to get rich, or your boyfriend or girlfriend is going to come back to you, or anything like that. Sometimes that's what people think when they see these different colors and stuff, that there's something like this that's occurring. No, it's just a physical thing that's occurring inside the brain. It's much more practical than what a lot of people tend to try to assign to these kinds of things. They try to assign kind of this higher importance, and this is just the conceit. This is just the ego thinking that, wow, I saw this or I saw that. Not that you're doing that, Calvin, but sometimes people do that, where it's like, wow, I saw this and I saw that. Am I a special person? No, everybody experiences the same thing. Don't let your ego run away with you, right? This is just the brain essentially rewiring itself, and now it becomes to the point where you might actually start seeing things. So that's what that's actually from. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. You have another question? Yeah.
Mr. David Master, I want to know, like, how long you've been doing the meditations, and do you still have something you cannot give up, like some kind of fear, some kind of maybe family, your children, and by now, like, how from your mind, how long you away from the fully open, something like that?
Okay, so I first started to understand that there was something even called a Buddha in 2001. And in 2002 is when I came to Thailand the very first time, and I was confronted with being in a Buddhist society. So that was kind of like my first exposure to anything Buddhism, right? Or anything that involved the Buddha. And from that point forward, I kind of started dabbling with what the Buddha was teaching based on what I knew at the time. But looking back over my life, I can see even before that there were things that I was doing long before 2001, 2002 that were Buddhist. So the way that I think about it is I've been learning and practicing these teachings for multiple lives, but I would have never told you at any point that I was really on the path to enlightenment until about 2018. That's when I would have said, okay, if you would have asked me, like, are you on the path to enlightenment? I would have said yes, because I understood what it was at that point. But prior to that, I wouldn't have told you anything like that because I didn't really understand what that was. So it's been since 2018 that I started teaching, because I fully understood at that point what the teachings were, and I started sharing the teachings more and more, writing books, having classes, courses, retreats, giving personal guidance to students, and all these kinds of things. At this point in my life, I don't experience any discontent feelings whatsoever. I don't have any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. All of that stuff has been eliminated. I no longer experience it, and that's why I'm so motivated to be able to help other people experience that as well, so I don't experience those kinds of things. There's nothing that my mind has been unwilling to give up. I've let go of everything, but make sure you understand that letting go of something doesn't mean that you end the relationship, for example, because you mentioned, is there something like your family that you're unwilling to let go of? Letting go is happening inside your mind. It's not the physical object that you have to let go of. So, for example, you can have a phone and not be attached to it. Sometimes people think that the attachment or the craving is the physical object itself, that if you have a wife or you have a daughter or a son, that you are attached, but that's not the case. It's based on whether your mind is longing, yearning for that and craving it to be permanent. So you could have a phone and you could be really attached to it, and you could be checking it every couple of minutes, and you could be wondering where it's at, and you could keep it by your side and be, so obsessed with your phone. That would be a craving, desire, attachment, right? But you could also be on the other side where you could care less, and you're just like, you just throw it around and it breaks and has problems, and you're buying new phones every couple of weeks or something like that. Either of those two extremes, it's unwise. And that's why the Buddha didn't teach that. He taught you to be able to come to the middle, where, for example, with something like a phone, you can have a phone and you can use it, but you can just understand that it's not permanent. So that way, when you misplace it or you can't find it or it's not working or it breaks, you're not upset. You understand that this phone is impermanent, that it's not permanent. So there hasn't been anything that I've been unwilling to give up or let go of. I let go of my wife and my son and all these other things, but I still have a relationship with them. We actually live together, right? I live in a household life. So just the fact that you're living with someone or you have a relationship with someone doesn't mean that you're attached to them. This is where people get misunderstandings, because they think that the Buddha left his family and he never went back. This isn't actually true. The Buddha left from his family for 6 years to be able to train his mind, but then he ultimately was interacting with them. His wife was one of his students. His son was one of his students. His stepmother was one of his students. You could see Ananda, his cousin, his brother-in-law. All these people were starting to learn with him. So he had relationships with these people. It's just that his mind wasn't attached, meaning he wasn't craving permanence. So this is something that you can experience as well. Mm-hmm. How far do I think I'm away from what? Free open. Would so for me, so a person who's enlightened would never say that they're enlightened, right? As soon as somebody says, I am enlightened, you know that they're actually not enlightened, because an enlightened being wouldn't be boastful or arrogant or prideful about them in their mental state. Instead, an enlightened being would be more interested in helping other people to be able to understand what enlightenment is if they're choosing to do so, right? They're not going to be bragging or boastful about what it is that they've actually accomplished. So when somebody asks me that type of question, I wouldn't answer it because it's unwise to do so. So I can share with you that there's nothing about the teachings of the Buddha that I don't understand. I understand every aspect of his teachings. I understand exactly what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. I can guide an individual to enlightenment. That individual needs to do the work and do the inner work to grow and develop on the path. But I know everything that it takes to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And I've been able to confirm that through what I've experienced for myself. And whether somebody considers me to be enlightened or not, that's a choice for them to make. But I wouldn't say that myself. But I can share with you that I no longer experience any anger and sadness and all those other feelings. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, to be able to come here and help people to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. Because I know if you experience enlightenment, it would be the very best thing for your life ever. And I'm interested in seeing more and more people experience that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking like I feel the world is changing faster and faster. So there are more like in modern era, there are more temptations and there are more lot of different kinds of indulgence for different people. Like in current era, we have new technology, like different conflict between different countries and wars happenings. Do you feel it's more difficult for people to practice towards the enlightenment in current era because there are more temptation, there are more like people are getting more fragmented in their intentions, so it's harder to focus. Or as you said, like it's all about like attachment in different era. There could be different challenging there, so it's actually never changed for the practice towards the difficulty of the practice towards enlightenment is always the same. It's just about your mind. It's just about attachment to deal with.
There's always obstacles to overcome in order to be able to get to enlightenment, whether it was during the lifetime of the Buddha or now. There was always obstacles for ordained practitioners as well as household practitioners. The obstacles are just different. There's still obstacles there. So for example, during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was very challenging for a household practitioner to get to enlightenment because we were just so busy trying to sustain our life that we had to carry water from the well 2 or 3 times a week. And that could take 4 to 8 hours a day for 2 to 3 times a week of just carrying water back and forth to our house. We had to do planting and harvesting. We had to make our own clothes. We had to, have a lot of skills to be able to sustain our own life, where today we've actually systematized all of that. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a lot of time devoted to just sustaining your life. So in terms of like sitting here and learning about the teachings of the Buddha or spending time meditating, you didn't have that ability as a household practitioner 2,500 years ago, unless you were very rich and very wealthy and you had servants to take care of all those kinds of things. So there was obstacles there for household practitioners, and there were obstacles for ordained practitioners too, because they left their families in order to be able to train their mind. But back then, during the lifetime of the Buddha, we could say that it might have been more straightforward for someone who was ordained to be able to get to enlightenment during his lifetime. But during today's lifetime, we might actually say it's actually more straightforward for a household practitioner to be able to get to enlightenment. Because today, as a household practitioner, the food, the clothing, all this kind of stuff, the water, it's all been systematized where you have so much time in your day that there's probably unbeneficial things that you do in your day. You might actually, some people surf social media for hour upon hour upon hour, or they look at YouTube videos hour upon hour upon hour. They have all this time. They don't even know what to do with it, right? Well, if people started spending time investing in learning and growing and developing on the path, they could actually make quite a bit of progress. So while we have these modern tools and technology, it doesn't make it more difficult to be able to get to enlightenment. In some ways, we might say it actually makes it easier, because right now there's people that are learning with me as I speak all over the world. Because of this technology, people are plugged into YouTube, into Zoom, into Facebook, and then it's being recorded. So people will be able to learn even afterwards. When I'm done teaching, they'll still be able to actually learn. So we can have a much farther reach with the teachings than during the lifetime of the Buddha. So there's benefits, pros and cons to both time frames. And during today's time frame, I would say that it's a lot easier for a household practitioner to be able to get to enlightenment. I agree there are a lot of temptations now, but those temptations didn't necessarily not exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. I mean, of course, they didn't have smartphones, they didn't have these kinds of things, but they had other things, they had other devices. Today maybe it's a Porsche or a Lamborghini or some other type of car that somebody's longing, yearning for. But 2,500 years ago, it was just a chariot. It was a certain chariot, right? Or a certain type of horse that somebody really wanted to have, that special color of horse, where today it's maybe a certain car, right? So it's the same thing. It's just that now, today, we have so much more time available to us in the household life, which is wonderful for household practitioners. And I would say the ordained path is maybe even a bit more challenging nowadays to be able to get to enlightenment, because there's a lot of conceit baked into the ordained lifestyle, that they actually tend to follow rules and commandments. They have a certain hierarchy in their community, and they teach conceit. They teach that if you as a household practitioner Y to an ordained practitioner, they teach you that you're above household practitioners, and that because you're above household practitioners, you shouldn't show respect to a household practitioner, which that by itself is conceit and hinders somebody from being able to get to enlightenment. So there's a lot of misunderstandings baked into the ordained life, that certain ordained communities, they don't understand the path, and therefore they're actually being hindered from being able to experience enlightenment. Where in the household life, you need to spend more time and effort and diligence to be able to seek out the teachings and bring them into your life, but you're not hindered by this community of people who are maybe teaching rules and commandments, who have a hierarchy in their community, who are teaching conceit as part of their foundation of their teachings and things of that nature. So things have definitely changed over the years since the lifetime of the Buddha, but enlightenment is even more likely for you today than it was 2,500 years ago, because you don't have to carry water back and forth from the well and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
You explained stream enterer. I'm just wondering the mirror part of the metaphor. I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Is that the pairs working together?
Where he's talking about the mirror of the stream enterer.
Yeah.
Basically, what he's saying is, like a mirror has a reflection, and he's saying, what will a stream enterer be practicing? Like, what's that reflection? What will you see coming from them? And what you're going to see is this confirmed confidence. You're going to, in the Buddha, the teachings and the community, and you're going to see this moral conduct that is superb, that they're going to be practicing this very virtuous moral conduct.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Calvin, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. There's more that Calvin's asking here on a Zoom. He says, just got scared by it. My first experience learning how to handle it. Yeah, no worries. Just don't allow your mind to have pleasant or painful feelings related to what you're seeing there in meditation. It's all normal. Calvin's also asking, does enlightenment come with responsibilities? No, it doesn't. The only thing that you have to do in this world is actually die. That's the only thing that's required of you, that you can't escape that. In this lifetime, you will experience death, but everything else is optional. Whether you choose to brush your teeth or not, it's optional. Whether you choose to wash your hair, whether you choose to go to school or not, whether you choose to work or not. I mean, there's consequences that you'll experience if you don't do these kinds of things. That's the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. But you really don't truly have to do anything in the world whatsoever. There's no responsibility or requirement of you other than to die. So, for example, I'm not required to come here. I'm not forced to come here. Nobody requires me to come here and teach. It's a choice that I'm making, just like you guys. You guys all made a free will choice to come here to the temple today. You're not responsible to do that or required to do that. So anybody who gets to enlightenment, they're not responsible to do anything. But what they will be doing by the time they get to enlightenment is they'll be living a very peaceful and joyful life, and everything they experience in their day-to-day life, their mind is completely peaceful and joyful. Their mind is bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted, but they don't have any responsibility to anybody, but they will make wise decisions about certain aspects of their life, but they're not required to do that. The only thing that each of us are required to do is die, that we need to do that, and there's no way for us to escape that in this life. That if you actually are going to experience this life, if you're born, there's going to be sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. There's going to be sickness, aging, and death. But the way to escape all of that is through training your mind. What you need to be able to do is train your mind, and now you can get outside of this constant sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair by getting to enlightenment. By getting to enlightenment, you will no longer experience birth. So therefore, you will no longer experience sickness, aging, and death, and you'll no longer experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. And you'll be able to see that that's occurring because as you're gradually training your mind in these teachings, you're going to see gradual improvements to the condition of your mind in your life. That's one of the beauties about the teachings of the Buddha, is because it's not believe, and hope something good happens when you die. Because in that situation, you don't know if you're believing properly or not until you actually die, because you either convinced yourself to believe something or others have convinced you to believe something. Where when you're not believing things and you're getting to the truth and you're independently verifying teachings to see if they're true or false and cultivating wisdom, you can see that wisdom now in this life. And as you're training your mind now in this life, you'll actually see the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life in this life. And this is how you know that you're actually headed in the right direction in this life, which is very unique to the teachings of the Buddha, because typically it is believe a bunch of things and hope something good happens when you die. But that's too late to figure out that you weren't doing things wisely, that once you're dead, that's too late. You would like to be able to see now that things are going well for you. And that's what the Buddhist teachings are guiding you to be able to do. But there's no responsibilities for you to do any particular thing as an enlightened being. More questions? Yeah, go for it. If you could use a mic, the people online will really appreciate that. It's up to you. You can choose not to use the mic. It's a choice for you to make, but the people online would appreciate it if you used it. I can. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a question about whether you have the wisdom inside of you to be able to actually get to enlightenment and so forth. So an individual who's going to become a Buddha, which is very rare in the world, the last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. That type of individual is able to observe the natural laws through their own abilities. But this is not normal. This is very rare. So when we talk about a Buddha, this is a very rare type of individual in the world. Sometimes people talk about an enlightened being as a Buddha. They will talk about every enlightened being is a Buddha. The Buddha never said that. People say that today, but that's their misunderstanding of what a Buddha is. A Buddha is an individual who meets those three criteria that I mentioned, that get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of teachers or guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime, and then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So that's a very rare type of individual that's going to do that. So you can get to enlightenment, but you're going to need teachers and guides to help you. The teacher or a guide is kind of like a tour guide. They're pointing out for you the things that you need to know and understand, but you've got to do the work to independently verify it so that you can cultivate the wisdom. So a teacher is providing you the resources and the means and the ability to be able to investigate these teachings, but but it's you that needs to do that work. So you're going to need someone to guide you, because you can't just read a book and get to enlightenment. You can't watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast and get to enlightenment. You're going to need a real live teacher to be able to take in the resources that they're sharing, but then you're going to need to consult with that person and get guidance to be able to understand how to apply those teachings in your day-to-day life, because your mind doesn't function in exactly the same way as a Buddha. A person who has become a Buddha, they have a certain quality of mind that the average person doesn't have, which is that they accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes, where like your mind has a certain limited capacity, like a hard drive on a computer, maybe like 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And when you get to capacity on your hard drive, you've got to delete old files in order to store new files. This is why, like, over the last 5 or 10 years, you can pretty much remember everything that you've been involved in. But if you think back to your childhood, it's probably very difficult for you to remember every single detail of what was happening during your childhood. You just have spotty memories. That's because you've had to delete old files in order to store these new files, because you have a limited capacity. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha, which again is very rare, they have an unlimited capacity to remember things in their mind. And they can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives as well. And this is how they accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves in their last life. But because your mind doesn't have that quality, you're going to need teachers and guides to be able to help you. But you should look at them as tour guides, because you are your own independent practitioner. You're not a devotee or a follower or anything like that. You're your own independent practitioner looking to cultivate wisdom, and a teacher is helping you by pointing out the things that you need to learn. And then you have the ability to consult with that person to be able to learn how to apply the teachings in your day-to-day life. So you don't have everything you need right now in order to be able to get to enlightenment. You're going to need teachers and guides. You're going to need resources. You're going to need to do this inner work and inner growth and inner development. You wouldn't be able to go out into the forest, live in a cave, and get to enlightenment by yourself. It would be impossible for you. Mm-hmm. Do you have another question?
My mother been like chasing the Buddha for a very long time, and she is 67 years old right now. She has something that she can never give up, like me. Is the most biggest problem for her to.
You said you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest problem for her. She always worry about me, and also she been always want to chase the enlightenment for a very, very long time. So in your point of view, do I need to let her know something, or I just let her go, and maybe someday she will realize that I'm not important, her chasing is not important, and after that go to the heaven is not important?
You don't have any obligation. You're not required to help your parents, but it's wise to be able to help your parents and your caregivers, people who care for you, because at one point you were very young in your life and you couldn't have survived in this world without your parents, right? So your parents gave you a certain amount of care. And sometimes it's not a parent, sometimes it's a caregiver, right? Like an adopted parent or a foster parent or something like that. They're providing you care to be able to care for you and help you to be able to have food and clothing and shelter and medical care and maybe an education and things like this. There's people in our life that come in out of our life that provide us care. And it's wise to notice that, hey, you wouldn't be where you are today without your parents' involvement in what your mom did. But you shouldn't adopt that as a requirement or an expectation or an obligation that you have to help them. But it's important to show appreciation and gratitude in these situations. So there's things that you can do to skillfully help your mom, but you shouldn't do that with expectation or any kind of feeling of obligation. That you can maybe suggest to her to be able to read certain books or certain resources, but you need to do the work first for yourself to be able to see the truth. Because you mentioned before class that you're from China, and one of the things that I know is the Buddhism that's being taught there, what people are calling Buddhism, is not actually what the Buddha taught. You see a lot of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this that are part of what's being taught there. And those types of things aren't going to get you to enlightenment. They're not even going to get you to the first stage of enlightenment. But if you can encounter some teachings, which I would suggest to you that these books that I share with you will absolutely help you to be able to experience more and more of the qualities of enlightenment and getting to enlightenment and receiving the guidance that you need. And when you see that this is working for you, you would then potentially be able to now share this with your mom. But you need to do it skillfully, where you're not forcing it on her, you're not pressuring her to be able to adopt what it is that you've learned, but instead maybe you give her a book as a gift, or maybe in little conversations here and there you help her to see some of the teachings, because it's very common for a parent to be attached to their child and hold on to their child. That's what she's doing. You know, she's got love in there where she loves you, but at the same time she's getting that confused most likely with craving, desire, attachment. Most parents actually do. There's something called craving, this longing, this yearning, this holding on and craving for it to be permanent. That's what she's got in your situation. But she's also got some love in there too. And if she gets her cravings, desires, attachments out of the way, she can then allow her care and her concern, her love for you to shine through. But as long as she has craving, desire, attachment in there, it's very challenging for that to occur. So I wouldn't think of yourself as being not important, like you said, because you can actually learn how to care for somebody, how to have appreciation and gratitude for them, how to have concern for them without craving, desire, attachment. Oftentimes people think it's their care and concern that's producing their sadness or their anger or their frustration, but that's not what it is. Sometimes people think it's their love that's producing the anger and frustration and sadness. That's not what it is. It's the craving, desire, attachment. It's the craving for permanence. But oftentimes when an individual's mind is letting go of craving, desire, attachment, it will swing all the way to the other side, where they think that practicing non-attachment is to not care. And that's not true. There's a middle way here where you can have care and concern, you can have appreciation, you can have gratitude, but you're not attached, and you're not over here either where you could care less about somebody, thinking of them as being unimportant, because you'll always be important in your mom's life, but she needs to learn how to come to the middle. But only she can choose to do that. So if you're going to choose to help your mom, which the Buddha talks about this in his teachings, that what I would suggest you do is to first learn the teachings yourself so that you can see that they actually work. And then in certain situations, maybe give her a book to be able to read, or give her a certain video that she could watch. And I don't know if she's able to speak English or read in English. Sometimes parents from certain countries, they haven't been able to learn English yet. So it might be a matter of getting a translated version of some of these books that will actually help your mom. And that's one of the best gifts that you could ever give to your mom. Because let's just say you bought her a luxury mansion and you brought her all these cars and all these jewelry and you gave her all this money, all the money that the world could provide. You haven't really helped your mom, because all those things are impermanent. They're not truly going to bring her happiness. What's going to actually bring her happiness is to be able to train her own mind. So that's the very best gift that you could ever give to your mom, is a gift of these teachings. And that's what the Buddha shares, and that's what you'll see to be true as you learn and practice them yourself. Giving this gift to other people to learn the teachings, it's the very best gift you could ever give to anybody. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, sir.
So you said that it's very rare that somebody becomes a Buddha, and the last time we saw it was 2,500 years ago. But you said that somebody become enlightened is different that somebody becomes a Buddha. So how often is it also this, very rare, or like how often we see people become the enlightened?
Yeah, we've had people become enlightened all throughout history. So getting to enlightenment, there's 4 stages of enlightenment, and anybody who gets to the 4th stage is an enlightened being. But in terms of being enlightened in a Buddha, that's very rare. But getting to enlightenment, it's happened all throughout history. There's people today who are enlightened, but how rare that is or how likely that is, there's no like registry somewhere that has a list of names of everybody who's enlightened, because each individual person who gets to enlightenment, they're not going to go out and profess that they're enlightened. They're not going to go out on the street corner and shout and scream how enlightened they are. They're not going to go on the news and declare that they're enlightened. So that we don't have any kind of registry of that. But I know several people who are enlightened or very close to it. It's possible for you to be able to get to enlightenment today, but you just wouldn't be a Buddha. That's the thing that's rare, is this type of individual that I'm describing. But getting to enlightenment, it can be very normal. In fact, I'm interested in seeing it become more and more normal, because the more people that actually get to enlightenment, the better the world's going to be, because you're going to be practicing in a way that's peaceful and loving and kind. Here in Thailand, I don't know the number of people that are enlightened, but I would say that there's probably the largest population of people in the world in Thailand that are practicing these teachings the closest. This is why so many people come here. They can see the Thai people are very peaceful, very joyful, very kind, very loving, very gentle. This is because they're practicing the teachings, and this is why so many people love to come here and enjoy coming here. They even move here from their other countries. They kind of give up their own life in their own country, and they come here to actually live. And I'm one of them, because it's just so wonderful to live amongst people who are awake. One of the things I say is the party is more fun when everybody's awake. Right? So if you think about life as like a party, it's like, hey, it's more fun when everybody's awake, right? When people are having cultivated this wisdom and they're practicing what the Buddha taught, it's much more enjoyable. But an enlightened being could actually live anywhere in the world and be completely content and be completely peaceful, but they are going to make wise choices about where they choose to live. And they're generally going to live in places where people are more comfortable with their presence. That if you are an enlightened being, you're not necessarily going to choose to live in a harsh and bitter and hostile environment. That would be unwise. So how likely it is for people to get to enlightenment, or how many enlightened beings we have today, I wouldn't be able to tell you, and no one else would be able to either. But you can, the more that you know what enlightenment is, the more you'll see those qualities in people around you. And you'll be able to see like, oh, this person's potentially enlightened. But that's not part of the path. It's not about determining whether someone else is enlightened. It's about you getting to enlightenment yourself. That's the ultimate goal. Okay, so I don't see any questions anywhere else. We usually study in this particular class to whatever point we need to. Sometimes we study multiple chapters. Today we just studied one, and you guys had lots of questions, and we had a nice discussion. So I think what I'm going to do is just in class here. It's about 10:45 or so. So I think this is a good point to just end class by thanking you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. Like I was mentioning this afternoon, from 1 to 4, I'm going to be teaching an introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course, where it's a really great place to get started, where you can learn what are the teachings of the Buddha and what they are not, and you can learn his very first teaching. And then tomorrow in our group learning program at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm going to be teaching chapter 17 from our book, which is Eliminating Fears. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate all your fears, even the fear of death. Oftentimes people have a fear of death. That's a very strong fear that people oftentimes carry around, but you don't need to carry that around. You can get very comfortable with death and understand that it's normal, and you don't have to fear it. And then at 6:30 tomorrow, synced up with the Sunday night walking market, we have meditation here, where I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation, which is very different than the one that we just did, where essentially there's a meditation that helps you to rewire your mind to be loving and kind and warm and gentle, where you don't have to walk around with the bitterness, harshness, and hostility in your mind towards others or towards yourself. So there's a meditation to help you with that. So I'm going to be doing that at 6:30 tomorrow. And then all next week, I'm going to be teaching the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course, which is Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. You'll see some of these details on the bulletin board over there, or you also see it on our website. You can also come and talk to me, and I'll help you get plugged in to what it is that we share here in order to help you to progress on the path. I suggest you start with this first book. This is the best place to start. You can actually get this for free by downloading it from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost so that we can use those funds to purchase more books, or you can order it on Amazon. This is the very best place to actually really get started, is this first book. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Jai. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.